Hello, everybody. How's it going? Ben Gothard here with another Project Egg interview. And today we're talking to Mari Connor from Kansas. How you doing today, Mari?
I'm well. How are you?
Great, fantastic. Thank you so much for coming to do the interview. So let's jump
Sweet.
let's jump right in. And my first question for you today is, what is your story?
What is my story? So I was brought up in a military family, which we just talked about a little bit before the interview started. Full on Army brat. Born in Oakland, moved to Fort Hood, Texas, moved to West Point, New York, where my father taught history at West Point. And then when I was 6 years old, we had the opportunity to move to Mons, Belgium. So we actually moved over to Europe, where my parents had the choice to, put all four of us kids into either the American section or an international section where we could learn French all day. And because I was young enough, out of all the kids, I'm the youngest of four, they opted to put me into this French section of the school. So learned French as a child. I came back to the United States and had a little bit of a culture shock landing in Leavenworth, Kansas, Lansing, Kansas to be specific, where I finished up junior high and high school, ended up attending the University of Kansas, received a degree in French, a liberal arts and science degree in French. Moved to Phoenix, Arizona after college. I had visited Las Vegas, and Las Vegas itself was a little too fast for me, but I did fall in love with the desert environment. So I made it a point when I graduated college to move down to Phoenix, Arizona, which is where I live now. And I landed in town and ended up getting a job at one of the most exclusive steakhouses here. And that led me to meet the owner of one of my favorite radio stations who was coming in for lunch, a talk radio station. And I ended up getting hired by him and went to go do copywriting and radio ad sales to help him grow his business. And that's where the foundation of my current skill set started. I was able to learn copywriting from just some of the greatest people, in advertising at the time. And then also learned to hone in on my sales skills. There's nothing like selling air to businesses, and eventually I just thought, the radio station in the long run ended up going around the recession, ended up going under. And it came back on as a new station, but I wasn't interested in being a part of the new management. And I just thought, what do I want to do with my life? And starting my own business definitely came to mind. My mentor had to sit down with me one day. I actually wasn't sure what I was going to do around 2012. And I was sending resumes out just out of desperation, thinking, well, I need to at least work a job, even though I kind of wanted to do my own thing. And I sent the resume to my mentor, who replied back to me in an email, "We need to meet for breakfast tomorrow." I thought, I just wanted him to review my resume. Why does he want to meet for breakfast? And we went to go meet for breakfast, went to go meet for coffee at a little cafe down in Tempe, Arizona. And he sat across from me and he said, "So I got your resume." And I said, "Yeah." And I said, "Is there anything you would add to that?" And he goes, "Yeah, I would tell you not to apply for a job." He said, I've watched you build several businesses on your own. You've always played a key role in any of the companies that you worked for. And most businesses that you worked for either doubled, tripled, or quadrupled their sales. And he just said, I'm not going to review your resume. I don't want to look at your resume. I believe you need to start your own business. And here's the thing, you need to jump out the window, but I can't push you. All I can do is have this conversation with you. And I just broke down into tears. And I said, how do I start a business? And he said, you're going to leave here and you're going to go down to Kinko's and you're going to get some business cards made. And you're going to he's like, you have a laptop? And I was like, yeah, I have a laptop. He said, you're going to leverage your laptop. He said, do you have a cell phone? I said, yeah. He said, basically, you've got all the tools that you need right now to start a business. And he said, I said, what about a bank account, a business bank account? And he's like, well, first of all, you don't need to worry about that right now, but you're going to go walk into the Chase, about 2 blocks away. There's a guy named Jerry who's helped me, build my business accounts up and who's helped me out. And you're going to go talk to him. And it's going to be great and you're going to be fine, but you are going to jump out a window and you're going to free fall and it's going to feel like you don't have a parachute. And, but it's going to be exhilarating. And he literally just got up from the table after that and left. And that was how Marigold Marketing Group, which is my current Facebook advertising agency, started back in 2012.
That is incredible. That is awesome. So, I wanna dig a little bit deeper into your history. You said that in the beginning of your life, during your childhood, you were moving around to a bunch of different places, and you even went to Europe for a while. How did that, the state of constantly being on the move, how do you think that helped to develop your own innate sense of who you are?
It's interesting that you asked that, because I've been thinking about that over the last several years. I've always been someone who is extraordinarily comfortable walking into a room full of people that I don't know. Like, that feels like a fish in water situation versus even walking into a room of people that I know really well or that I'm close to. And I think that tracks back to the early sort of military life and moving from place to place, is that I know how to connect with people extraordinarily quickly because I had to do it out of survival, out of social survival as a child. And that has literally, to this day in my business, the majority of our new leads that come in usually come from events, because I'm really good at working a room, creating a connection with others, having one-on-one time, listening to them intently, and not just thinking about my own whatever that's going on. I know how to be really present for other people. So that definitely, as traumatic as it was very traumatic to leave Belgium, where we ended up getting extended. We were there for 5 years, which is a little longer stay than most military assignments. And moving back to Kansas, where I didn't know anyone, I was forced to do what I needed to in order to survive socially, and just walk up to people and say, "Hi, my name is Mari. Who are you?" Because they weren't going to be, especially being in a small Kansas town, they weren't as open to someone that they didn't know. Yeah, definitely a formative skill that came out of this sort of semi-traumatic experience as a child.
Absolutely. So, for entrepreneurs, I really do think it's important to, and this phrase has been coined before, but to be comfortable even when you're uncomfortable, right? So for aspiring entrepreneurs, for people who might not have that skill set developed, what advice would you give them in order to help them take their, I guess, networking or social skills up to that next level?
Yeah. So step out of your comfort zone. Do things regularly that are uncomfortable. Walk into rooms. Attend networking events where you don't know anyone, and there are plenty going on in every city. And you'll start to strengthen that weak muscle. Try not to call someone to ask them to attend an event with you. Go by yourself. Go to the movies by yourself. And the biggie is go to a restaurant by yourself. And you'll find that actually, the restaurant team is usually more than willing to visit with you and laugh with you, and like they want to be heard too. So I think that's like a great extra, and try to do it like without, and here's another step, without alcohol, to really just like take it to the next level and, not use anything as a crutch and just say, I'm going to go do this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I do think that's really important. So, you said also that your father taught at West Point, for some period of time. Did that have any influence on you growing up? I mean, what did he teach, and how did the things that he teach kind of pass down to you, being in such close proximity?
So he, growing up under a lieutenant colonel in the military, is a unique experience. And what he gave us was the attention to detail. Things aren't right until they're right. And, the idea of follow through, when you say you're going to do something, you do it. He's ultimately one of the most moral people that I know on the face of the earth. When he says something, he's going to do it. And that was definitely passed on to us. And I do believe that's an intangible secret to success. People can look in your eyes and tell if you're serious about what you're saying. And if you're going to follow through, of course, then it's confirmed once you do say that you're going to do something and you follow through on it. Attention to detail maybe even kind of just a touch of like military OCD, making sure that everything's filed in the right way, everything's labeled properly. Not only that, but we played a lot of chess in our family and thinking several moves ahead. So even when you're filing something, are you filing it in a way that someone else would be able to find it? And that's literally like almost as important of a thought as where do I file this? Is if someone's going to come along after me, would this make logical sense? And I do believe that I employ that across my entire company, is teaching my team to think several moves ahead. What could go wrong? A client has sent us a link to create a Facebook ad. What could go wrong, and what do we need to communicate with them on to make sure that we cover all the bases so that we're not scrambling at the last minute to get that information?
Absolutely, absolutely. So there are two important points I want to touch on here, both of which you mentioned. The first one is morality, right? So you said that was kind of a secret key to success, and I think you're absolutely correct, because if you're not operating your business or operating yourself in a morally sound way, it's just, and this is my opinion, that people aren't going to want to work with you after a while, right? If you're looking to screw the next person over, word's going to get out and people aren't going to want to work with you. So can you maybe talk about it and maybe give a little bit more insight into the importance of morality in business and of developing your moral compass as an entrepreneur?
So the number one key to business and to selling specifically is trust. And the easiest way, and actually the number one key to long-term business, so staying in business is creating relationships and nurturing and follow through on those relationships. So we make very, very clear decisions in my company that we don't make short-term decisions. If something goes wrong and a client is dissatisfied, we need to address it immediately. And most of the time, people just want to be heard and they want to be acknowledged, even in let's say a product or service dispute. Is that, I see it online all the time, brands who don't take the time out just to listen to the person. Essentially, they're hurt and they feel betrayed for whatever reason. There's a miscommunication and they feel like they're getting the short end of the stick. And what I believe is a lot of people, our lives are so fast moving. We don't connect a lot anymore. I think that a lot of times people do have grounds for the complaints that they may have, but I think sometimes people are just experiencing emotions that they can't deal with, and sort of the next bad thing that happens that day is the thing that's going to get that influx of emotion on it. And literally, I don't know how many times I have found just getting on a call with a client or with a customer and listening to them and saying, tell me what happened, step by step, acknowledging it, repeating it back to them so that they know that you've heard it, and then acknowledging them for it and say, I am so sorry you had this experience. And really, whether I'm apologizing for the experience or really apologizing for something bigger that's going on in their life, I'm okay with that. And I'm happy to take care of both. And I view the customer or client and business relationship more of one that's a lot more psychological in nature, in the sense of like, friend to psychologist than probably any other type of relationship that it could be compared to. And so taking the time to just let them know that they're heard, let them know that we apologize, will we be given the chance to do better next time? That would be the ideal scenario. But if it's also time to break ties, I mean, I'm not here to hold anybody hostage, with my business. And I do that because I want that person to say, you know what, I called Mari and I had a bad experience, but they handled it so wonderfully. I can easily recommend them to you because my situation was, A, B, C, or D that Mari and I talked about. And I learned a little bit of that, in restaurants. Generally, the most upset customer when I was working in restaurants, usually if you ended up, turning their experience around as quickly as possible, they end up becoming your biggest evangelist because they have a story. They love telling the story of how horribly wrong it went and then how the angels came down and took care of their situation. And so someone who, if that person had just an average experience at the restaurant, a normal, decent, good experience, they wouldn't tell 25 people. But because they had sort of a, negative initially and then everything turned around, they'll tell like 30 people. And I fully believe in that. So to the extent that being the morality, sometimes doesn't give you the short wins. Having to let go of a client is never fun, but the long-term rewards more, are come to you in multiples and are exponentially more great than losing the short-term dollars.
Absolutely.
In my experience.
And I'm glad you went so thorough in that answer. I really do appreciate it. So the second thing that I wanted to touch on was organization, right? Because I feel like this is one of the fatal flaws of most entrepreneurs in the very beginning of their careers, right? They're just kind of, they're doing this, they're doing that, they're not really focused on anything, they haven't really consolidated their efforts. Can you talk about your experiences of how organization has helped you, and then how to develop those organizational skills if you don't already have them?
So to be totally transparent, I have spots where I'm extraordinarily organized because of the military background, but then I had kind of like a jovial, very laid back mother. And in other ways, like I don't have just one junk drawer at home. I have, 2 or 3. So I have to, but the same character trait that causes me to have more than one junk drawer is also what makes me so, exceptionally creative. So I have to respect, what my strengths are. In my business, the very first thing that I hired for, because I knew it was my weakness, was bookkeeping and accounting. In fact, I believe my bookkeeper essentially started when my business started. You can hire them, and I'm sure there are different types of that type of person that you need to kind of complement your weaknesses. You can usually find them for an hourly rate to start, and maybe just for one day a week, just a couple of hours a day to help make up for that weakness. But that was the very first thing that I hired for. Everything else I could handle to some extent. The organization does become more and more critical as you grow. And it's something to keep in the back of your mind that if there is a piece of that is a weakness, then the team members that you bring on, you want to make sure that they are extraordinarily strong in those areas. So if you're stronger in the organizational, but you're not as good at the creative piece, then if you hire a virtual assistant, you may want to ensure that they have a skill set that balances yours out, that they do have a creative side and come to you every Friday and say, hey, I've just had some ideas about some marketing we could do, or, some ways that we can improve our systems or our flow. And it just came to me while I was laying in bed last night. I think it's really, really smart to play up and to hire for your weaknesses and to emphasize your skills. And mine is, accounting, bookkeeping, a piece of organization, sort of day to day, kind of keeping the desk clean is more of my weakness. Actually keeping the files straight and know where to find things. I'm sorry. So the desk being dirty is more of my weakness. But knowing where the files and where the documents are and where the agreements are stored is more of a strength in my case. So yeah, I everybody that I've hired, I've usually tried to hire at the moment. I try to be very clear on what my strengths are at that moment. So the first hire was different than the second hire, than the third hire. By the time I'm at the fourth, it's like, what are my strengths? What are the company and what are my strengths and weaknesses at this point? And whatever position we're needing to hire for, let's ensure that person has a few more of those skills that they can bring to the table.
Absolutely. And I like that you brought up hiring and bringing in other people, because I think that is an important part of running any business, right? There are solopreneurs out there, but that's not for everybody. Some people work better as a team. So whenever you are hiring,
just to jump in on that,
yeah.
Because I wish someone had told me, hire before you're ready. The first team member that I brought on outside of the bookkeeper was immediate, but then the first team member that I brought on, I really sort of, killed myself for 3 or 4 months trying to handle everything because I was afraid and didn't know how to find that person. And the death of all entrepreneurs is thinking that they can't do it as well as you can. And hiring Sarah, who was the very first hire that I made, it allowed me to make more money because I was at a point where I had plateaued business wise. And the numbers weren't going up, and I needed to be able to hand something over. And so that entrepreneurs know, you can hire freelancers, for as low as around minimum wage, even here in the States. And that just, if you think about it in the context of 1 hour a week or 2 hours a week or, a couple of hours a month just to help you out, it really, really puts it into context, and you will see the results like immediately. It does take time to, you have to let go of the perfectionism stick, and get a little bit more flexible, and know that there's a lot in life that they or I am also not perfect at, and that it takes us a minute to learn, but sticking with that person. And what I found over time is essentially having a weekly meeting, either with my team or with key members, where I'm literally training them week in and week out. And we go over what they've done, what they're doing really well, and that I'm totally delighted with. And then we go over what's maybe not working and how we can correct that. And what I've been seeing lately, if I've seen the same mistakes over and over, cool, let's get on a screen share call and go over how to fix that. But I definitely hire before you're ready.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, again, I'm really glad you brought that up, right? And I'm glad you specifically talked about hiring a freelancer. So I think that's a big big decision that we have to make as entrepreneurs is, do I want to go more the virtual assistant route, where maybe I give them tasks and just kind of random tasks and they submit it back to me and then I plug it into the system? Or do you bring in somebody who is really more internally focused, who you can say, okay, I need you to do this, that, and then they know all the ins and outs of your business too, right? So how do you make that distinction in your business, and what advice do you give to others to make that distinction in theirs?
So for my business, and I think I'm probably pretty representative of most businesses, is you're not going to have the income initially to pay someone to be there all of the time, and it, there's a part of it that's not fair to pay someone not a full-time salary, and to kind of expect them to be on call just waiting for you to reach out. So that's where I think that the freelance opportunity is a perfect one for solopreneurs. And, I really like Upwork. I've used it for 3 years now. It's where I've found all my long-term team members. I hired Sarah, I think almost 3 years ago this month. Another team member, Jill, I hired 2 years ago a month on Upwork. And then most of the team members actually that have outperformed even local hires have been from Upwork. And what Upwork allows, the reason I mention it is because what Upwork allows you to do is that you only pay them for the time that they work. And Upwork has a software where they'll take screenshots of the freelancer's screen so that you know that they're working on your work while they're doing it. Also, there's not a whole HR issue. You pay Upwork directly, and I think it just goes down as kind of a professional fee on your bookkeeping, as opposed to a salary or payroll or that kind of thing. So it's just and it's really easy to get started. I mean, you set up your profile and then you go look. And a couple of tips around making your first hire is, once again, go back to that list where you make a list of your skill, your strengths and your weaknesses. Tasks, all of your tasks that you do, and then start with the ones that go through that list of tasks that you do and pick out the ones that you hate. That really, and here's why, because those tasks that you don't enjoy doing are the ones that zap your energy for all of the other tasks. And so figure out what those tasks are that you really hate doing. Find a dignified way of putting that information together in a post on Upwork. Figure out what industry, sort of what industry you're looking for. I think most solopreneurs will be hiring like a VA that has certain strengths and weaknesses. So, you'd be looking for a virtual assistant who, has worked in such and such industry, but we're specifically looking for someone who's very strong in, typing quickly, grammar, that kind of thing, bookkeeping if you need it. And then you put that up on Upwork, and you'll get responses, and you may have to do a little bit of headhunting yourself. So you'll get some responses, but I also encourage people to pop around Upwork and invite users that they find attractive to their posting, and do interviews, do multiple interviews, and if you can actually create a task that's related to maybe one of these tasks that you hate doing, and split test the Upwork 3 or 4 Upwork workers just to see how they perform. Maybe give them, if you're looking for a writer, give them each a task, the exact same task, so that it's really a true split test with a deadline. Assign that to all 4, and I will tell you, one will come out as the shining star. Someone will get it done extraordinarily quickly in a very organized manner, more beautiful than you thought that you could have put together yourself. And the other three will be distant, third, fourth, or second, third, and fourth on the list.
Absolutely.
So be very, very thorough in the vetting. Take your time, interview, Google interview questions, pick out the questions that relate to your industry. And as a final precaution, check, if they have references, try and call those. But as a last effort is, create a task that more than one can do. Pay them for it. Pay them the $10 an hour for the 2 or 3 hours to write that blog. Pay each one. It will be more than worth the $100 to find out who the shining star is.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, I use Upwork a ton, right? And the thing that you said about the rising star will reveal themselves, that's absolutely true. 100%. I've found that every single time. Now, one thing that I kind of struggle with, and I feel like a lot of other people do too, is when you're bringing on these virtual assistants, there are a lot of password protected accounts that you have to give them access to. Like, for example, if they're going to upload something to YouTube for you, or they're going to put something on Amazon for you, right? Like that's giving them a lot of power, a lot of access to your private stuff. And if they do something, then that could be pretty bad. It could tarnish your reputation or any number of problems. How do you get around that, and how do you really ensure that everything that you've been working for is protected as you do invite people to work on the business with you?
So grabbing a software like LastPass, I just tend to lean towards LastPass. It works for me, where you can hide the actual passwords, but give them whatever access that they need to the website. So when they go to the website, it'll just say, do you want to choose this username or that username? They would choose the one that's my username, and on the password side, they would just choose the password for that username, but the password doesn't show up as to what it is. So LastPass is a solution around that. There's a level of acceptance. So I'll jump kind of to a related topic is, credit cards and using credit cards online. And, I have family members and everything who all, freak out saying, oh, you subscribe to so many things just being in business. What do you do about, about your credit cards getting compromised? Well, first of all, your credit cards are going to get compromised. If you're going to choose to start an online business, they will get compromised. Most banks are really excellent about how they handle it. But I think the first step is just accepting that part of life. On occasion, about once a year, I have to switch all of my credit card information over because, it's been compromised between my online transactions or an ATM that I used when I was driving to California on the way to a conference, or any number of reasons. So that's the first thing, is don't freak out about a credit card being compromised. It happens. Contact the bank, follow their instructions. You'll likely get all the money back immediately for any transactions that you didn't approve. But as far as credit cards, you would have to read the fine print in Upwork, and I do believe that they have extraordinarily thorough agreements. And sometimes you can hire someone that's that works for an agency where they also have agreements around sort of NDA and protecting that information. And with my team members that have been with me longer and we've earned trust, I give them the credit card information because there are transactions that I need them to take care of. And I make that decision 100% on me, knowing that even if they were to run off to the circus tomorrow, again, I have a history with them, so I know that they're likely not going to do that. But even if they did, part of the thing about working online is that your credit card can be compromised. You can report that as a fraudulent activity, and you're not out any money. You just have to switch your credit card information. So not allowing, fears that we have to stop us. In some cases, there actually just needs to be a level of acceptance that if we want this amazing life where we can be so free and travel anywhere we want, you and I can do, we're doing what we're doing right now on a laptop. I can do this on an island, or I can do this at home. That part of the give and take with that lifestyle, is compromised information. But a way to protect passwords right off is LastPass or other related softwares. And just knowing that credit cards are going to need to be replaced, anywhere from once a year to once every 2 years.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, I want to dive a little bit back into your history. We kind of got off on a tangent there, but again, I want to thank you for providing all that value.
Yeah.
So, you said you went to Europe at around 6 years old, I believe, and you said that you learned French. So how has that impacted your life, knowing a different language and learning it at such a young age?
Ben, I have to tell you, these are like amazing questions. Like you're an excellent interviewer. And this is one of those topics that in the last couple of years I thought about. And so, my skill sets currently are, I'm an extraordinarily proficient copywriter. I'm really great at sales. I'm really great. I'm very competitive. I do like to, surpass the sales from the previous month. I'm very motivated and driven in some ways. I have days where I just need to veg out and watch Netflix like the next person. But, so those are my skill sets, and I attribute a lot of the sales to my father being so strict and, the sort of the military lifestyle. But I attribute the copywriting to having learned a foreign language as a child. Knowing a foreign language gives you access to double the vocabulary of a normal person. So there may be ways that someone in Europe or someone in Belgium says something, maybe we say, are you going to the store? And they'll say, are you headed to the store? And that's like the common phrasing there. Just the fact that I had to flip between those two phrases gave me two verbs to use regularly. In whether it be in English or in French, it's the same phrase, it's the same general idea, but I was able to say it two ways. So when I'm crafting, let's say, a Facebook ad, I have a lot of different ways of saying the same thing. And that's it's definitely become even more handy in the last couple of years with online platforms that have stricter and stricter policies around copywriting, like that you can't advertise things like weight loss or fat burning or anything that'll give a user a negative experience. So, but I have this entire other vocabulary that I can tap into to essentially say the same things that won't trip up any policy issues. So the second language has basically given me an entire other vocabulary, and I encourage anyone who knows two languages to perhaps look at the fact that they may have a pretty great writer inside of them. Absolutely. Which can help them, and there's no characteristic that can help you more in business than communications and communicating properly. So having two vocabularies definitely helps that.
I agree, and one of my best friends in the whole world, he's from Honduras, and we have this conversation every once in a while, and sometimes he'll say, I think in Spanish most of the time, and I'll dream in Spanish most of the time, and then one day we were talking about it, and he's like, dude, the weirdest thing happened. I had a dream in English, and it was just kind of a funny back and forth because I never even thought about that, about right. Just the different mindsets and how that really affects your mind. So I'm glad.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I had a lot of dreams in French, and then when I go back to France, I spent a month in France like 2 years ago, and it was within a couple of days, I was like dreaming about conversations that I had. And it's a trip. You're like, that's awesome. I'm speaking French like in my dreams.
That's awesome. That is awesome. So let's talk about when you went to Kansas after Europe. You said you got your degree in French. Can you maybe talk about kind of who you were at the time you went through college and what you learned and who you really developed into in those formative years?
Yeah. So returning to the United States from Belgium, I mentioned was extremely hard and extremely traumatic. I think because I was just young enough in Belgium that it's just that country and their way of doing things had become my norm. And that was really like all I knew. Some of my earliest memories were in Belgium. And then just arriving back in the States, like, don't get me wrong, America is amazing. Like, there's so much opportunity, and there are beautiful people in Leavenworth, and I relish going back to like high school reunions and stuff now. But to arrive there after having lived in Europe, with folks from a small town in the middle of the USA who had known each other since kindergarten, made it very, very hard to fit in. And so I actually had a pretty rough time. I had done very well at the school in Belgium to the point where I skipped from first to third grade while I was at the school in Belgium. I went back because I missed my friends, and then I skipped from fourth to sixth again. It was like basically the school gave me another chance and said, look, you're doing like the next level's work or whatever. Why don't we just skip you ahead? Versus in the States, I stuck out like a sore thumb. Nobody wanted to hear my experiences of having been in Europe. These kids had all been together since kindergarten. And I had a pretty sort of rough, social experience in junior high and high school. And actually, my grades ended up going down. So I mentioned the high grades in Belgium because that just resonated with me, and that was home. That when I got to Kansas, my grades actually started going down, and I think I may have graduated high school with like a 2.2 or something, not for any intelligence, not having the intelligence to get a higher grade, but just lack of motivation and not fitting in and feeling different then. And that just sort of all came out in the grades. So when I got to college, that was a little bit like a breath of fresh air to me, because people come from all over the world to go to universities. And so just that alone, being able to finally meet and talk to people that had, been to Europe and, that maybe were from Asia or South America, like that stuff intrigued me because that was a part of my story. Like I wish people had asked me more questions, when I didn't know anyone. So college resonated with me. It resonated with me. I had a rough start in college, and I think it was just because I was a little bit out of the habit of schoolwork and doing well. And, I had a horrible first semester. I want to say that I may have even gotten under a 1.0, and my parents came to visit, the colonel showed up and said, if this doesn't improve, we're not going to support you. So do what you need to do. And something about that conversation kind of got me into gear. And I learned at that time how to find the system around things, or how to hack things. And I figured out the hack for college for me was I needed to show up to every class. I needed to do every assignment and take every test. And I needed to go to office hours. Those three things would result in A's. And it made it simpler for me. It didn't make it this huge complex, how do I get an A? It was like, if you go to every class, you pretty much, know all the material. So you're generally good on assignments and tests. And then going to the office hours just sort of sweetens the pot, because if you're ever on a borderline A-B situation, the professor's going to look at the fact that you came to visit them. So once I figured out that system, I was roaring to go. But I did take a couple of business. I had planned on majoring in business. I felt a little bit of a calling towards it. I did horribly in business classes. I did horribly learning supply and demand out of a textbook. It made no sense to me. Why, if demand goes up, supply, I couldn't understand it theoretically. But the minute I got out of college and, went to go work at restaurants and started taking on more responsibilities, it made total sense to me, why, when supply is up, the demand is low, and, why costs rise and that kind of thing. And I actually ended up in my free time going back to a local community college here to retake those courses, now that I sort of understood the business world visually. So struggled with it in the books, didn't know what to do. Basically, French was my best skill, that I could find a major in at that time. And by my sophomore year, I just said, I'm just going to major in French because I naturally lean towards it, and I need to get a college degree if my parents are supporting me. And so I sort of graduated with a French degree by default. But little did I know, what a benefit that's been to me and has set me apart even in the Facebook advertising world with the copywriting skills that I've developed. So you never know where you're going to end up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so, I want to talk about when you did graduate. You said you moved to Phoenix right after you graduated. Is that the correct timeline? And then you started working at the steakhouse. So can you maybe talk about your experiences during that time and what you learned in that time?
Yeah. So I started out at the steakhouse just as a server, but always had a little bit of an inner drive in me. And I remember approaching the owners of the steakhouse and saying, look, you don't really have a day manager. You have a night manager. We have lunches and you don't have a day manager. Would you consider me? And I think the fact that I was, 25 years old, 24, 25, the owner felt like, this is a place where celebrities come and politicians, and that I might have been a little bit wet behind the ears. And she turned me down the first time that I asked. And then I have these periods throughout my life where if I feel a little bit lost, I'll do things like go take a trip, and I found this volunteering opportunity online. I couldn't even tell you where now, to go spend 6 weeks in Africa. And again, being out of my daily schedule is more familiar to me. That's where I find comfort and a place of reflection. And so ended up in the small village in Africa. It was supposed to be a reforestation project, but everybody and everything is so poor there that we just ended up laying around on mats talking to the villagers for pretty much 6 weeks, which was lovely. But by the time I got back from that experience, I went back to the state, since I'd been gone from the steakhouse for 6 weeks, it was totally supported because it was a volunteering effort. When I went back, I just very firmly said, look, I want to be the daytime manager. You need one, you need someone that can organize this. I can do it. And I want to do it. And at the second time she went ahead and accepted. And so, being more direct about what I want instead of loosey goosey, I'd really like this thing, and just saying, here's what I want and why and how I can help you. It wasn't about me, wanting the job. It was I can increase sales. I can help you not worry about, the management during this time period. I can help train the servers. I've been a server, so I'll garner a lot of respect, from the servers. And, and so ended up doing that for almost 5 years.
Wow. So I want to talk about what you said about being very direct. Do you find that as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, it's beneficial to you to be more direct, or is, doing some other avenue, has that been more successful? So maybe you could give a little bit of insight on being direct.
Yeah. So I'm probably a little guilty at this point at times of being too direct. And my directness comes from efficiency and not out of maliciousness or negativity. I do know that my directness can sometimes rub the team the wrong way, because it makes you feel, when someone's very direct with you, it can just make you feel like, oh, am I in trouble? It's the first thought that we all have come up. But I think I did learn that over the years, in the sense that not being clear also wastes a lot of time and energy. And but I do think that there's a healthy balance. It's definitely important to want to grow a business and to impact people, but it's also really important to be a kind person. And we get back to the morals and the values and so it's on me to sort of catch myself when I maybe direct and abrupt, and try to make it more direct with a smile or direct with a compliment, and kind of, just sweeten it up a little bit, because people, everybody that we're dealing with are humans. Everybody wants a smile and a hug and to feel good. And ultimately, that's the stuff that motivates people. They aren't motivated out of fear. I know that I'm not motivated out of fear. I don't expect anyone around me to be motivated out of fear. So it's a double-edged sword, and it needs to be it needs to be mastered very carefully. And sometimes it's trial and error, and sometimes you do rub someone the wrong way, and you may scare away, or turn off a client or a team member, and that just gives you a moment of reflection, as opposed to feeling like a failure and I'm just going to stop everything because I'm not doing it right. Just a moment of reflection. What could I have done better? How can I be a better person? And what things can I kind of exercise? And I'm sort of working on that right now, because as more and more pressures come in with the business, you can end up being very abrupt when you're just making a request. And I certainly don't want anyone's, feelings to be hurt. That's never my goal. But so, remembering that, we're trying to build a business, there may be stress that goes along with it. But taking time out for yourself, having morning rituals, which I'm not great at, by the way. So don't, but I do try to, do things in my life, go out with friends regularly. I like how my friends kind of keep my world in balance, and they remind me of who I am truly. They've known me since before I built up the business. And I believe those are my greatest assets in the world, are my friendships and my family.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned friendships and family, because that kind of touches on what I wanted to ask you next. What is the thing that motivates you, the thing that drives you? In other words, what is your purpose?
So I'm in the middle of, I'll answer this by saying, I started my business in 2012. By the end of 2013, I was starting to feel a little bit of pain around, how does this grow? How does it go faster? What am I doing wrong? Am I doing okay? I'm working alone at my computer every day. I have no idea how I'm doing even compared to the competition. And I think I hit enough of a pain point that I was pretty in depth in Facebook advertising, but there were parts of the advertising as it related to funnels that I didn't understand. I really didn't understand how to convert traffic. I could get a lot of engagement, I could get a lot of comments, I could get a lot of shares, but business owners started coming to me and saying, look, if you can't produce, some sort of asset for us or an ROI, we're going to have to cut ties with you. So I had just one of those pain points. Literally a Facebook ad came through my newsfeed that said, learn the secrets to Facebook advertising, and it was very specific around funnels. And it actually was Nick Unsworth, who's the owner of Life on Fire. And I ended up taking his course. It totally filled in a lot of the holes that I had. And it was a huge investment, by the way. It was $997. Like that was, I think that was about as much some months as I was bringing in. Huge decision to make. But went ahead and, put it on a credit card. And literally the moment that I did that, I think just by opening yourself up to something like that, to learning, to growing, and knowing that you're going to do it, I was not going to pay this money and then just let the course sit there. Actually implementing what he had to say. It was like accounts just started naturally coming in because I had a different vibe about me. And I'm getting around to a point as far as purpose here in that I attended one of his events. And at one of the events, we were going through hot seats. And one of the lessons that I learned at the first hot seat that I went through was, I said, I'm charging such and such a month, and I'm only making this much a month. And everybody looked at me with their mouths open. And they're like, you need to be charging a lot more. You're not charging enough. You're worth more. We've had conversations with you. You understand Facebook ads inside and out. You need to increase your fee. And that, those ideas had never occurred to me. I was like, increase my fee? What, just randomly? With no, demand or supply or anything related to it. So just planting the seed. And that I remember this gentleman across the table, Mike O'Neill, who has a podcast, looked at me and said, you need to fix this. And once again, I was confused. What does that mean? That seems like abstract self-help stuff. What does this mean? And little did I know, it meant that I needed to, open myself up to all of the possibilities. And I'd come from a military family where you were told, all you need is all you need. There's no wanting, there's no asking, there's no special presents on Christmas. Everybody just gets what they need. And that's what I'd come through my whole life. And to open up to this, just sort of idea of there's more out there. And so the second mastermind that I went to, I ended up in the middle of the room with these two coaches who said, okay, hello, Mari, so what do you want? What do you want? And I was like, as far as business? And they're like, no, what do you want? And I was like, I don't know. And they're like, what do you mean you don't know? And I said, I don't know. If you're talking about my business, I guess I want to grow my business. And they said, no, we're talking about what, again, passion. What moves you? What do you want to do? What do you want to? And I was literally baffled. I was completely baffled by the question. And I think I just got up from the chair with my mouth open. I may have cried once or twice because I was so frustrated that I didn't know what they were asking. I went home, and it took about a week or two of being home to realize that, they're asking about what I love and what I would want to do if I had, all the money in the world and, time. And so I made a declaration at that point that I want to travel. I want to travel full time. That went along with, my passion as a kid, living in another country. And I want to run my business from wherever I am. And within, I don't know, let's see, that event was in January. And by December, I was in New Zealand at a retreat, running my business from my laptop, making more than I had ever made. I may have even hit 5 figures that month. I was pretty close to hitting 6 figures by the end of the year. So at that time, I knew that it was traveling. I'm actually going through sort of another discovery period right now, because now I have, since the end of 2014 until just this year, I just got back from 2 months in Greece, working from my laptop, just hanging out in a village, doing my thing, that I'm kind of in a, what do I want now? And I'm literally in that right now. I have a business coach who gave me the assignment of doing some writing over the next 2 weeks, so that we can drill down on what is it that Mari wants at this point. And I think it constantly evolves and it constantly changes. And I accomplished that goal. And there was a little bit of emptiness. I'm making more money than I ever have. I'm traveling the world. This was all because of those events and that program that I bought. I thought I was just getting a course on Facebook ads. And what I ended up with was these humongous life lessons. and that's where I'm at. I'm in rediscovery mode.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. So, I want to talk about when you met the owner of that radio station, because it seemed like that was sort of a turning point for you in a professional sense. So, can you talk about what happened when you met that individual and the events that kind of happened after that?
Sure. So at that time, I think that the steakhouse situation had plateaued to some extent. I was the day manager. I was, one of the only female managers that had ever worked there. The night management positions were all full, and I was having sort of an internal like, it just doesn't feel like I'm, going to go much higher here. And I definitely have always had some sort of inner drive to keep going and growing and learning and doing different things. And so at the time, this radio station that would come on in the morning, I just loved. It was a talk radio station that I loved listening to on the way to work and on the way home. It was like that was my little passion at the time, was the station. And so when and I even had like, bumper stickers up at my desk for this station. Like the staff all knew that I was like a huge fan of this talk radio station at like 25 years old or whatever. It's kind of like pre-podcast, basically. It's like the original podcast. And one of my servers came up to me one day and said, "Hey, Mari, like, Table 51 is the GM of that station that you have all these bumper stickers for or whatever. Like, you should go say hi." And so went over to go talk to him, and the first thing that I did was just thank him profusely for the station. I just said, "This is a breath of fresh air in this city. Like, I love this and this show in the morning, this and this show in the afternoon. You helped me keep my sanity." It was one of those, like, I was very, very in tune with what was going on at the station. And he turned around and looked at me and said, "You need to know it's really impressive that you're working here, this kind of exclusive steakhouse." And he said, "I wouldn't be one who would want to pull you out of any situation." But he said, I can train skills. I can't train passion." And he just said, you have the type of passion that I want someone to have that's on my team. And so, if you want to, continue this conversation, I think he gave me his card or whatever, said, drop me an email. And we just went on from there. He ended up sending someone to the restaurant to kind of give me some background on the job and scheduled an interview with him. And, I met with the same mentor that I met with in 2012. I met with in, 2004. And said, "What do I do?" And he says, "You ask them for all they're worth." I was like, "Really? People do that?" So I didn't quite ask. I asked him for more than I thought even I deserved. I didn't ask him for as much as I could get. But that was a good lesson. Like, wow, all I have to do is ask. And it was like done. And yeah, so at that time I ended up following the passion of the station and then got to go very deep into the radio station. And that's where, that little path on my journey led me to the copywriting and to the sales.
Absolutely. So can you talk about, and again, I really like providing value on these interviews, and I want to thank you for all the value you provided so far, but I think we can bump it up a notch.
Okay.
So those copywriting and sales skills, how did you develop them? Like, what actionable steps did you take in order to become better at those two skills?
So usually when I need to learn something that I don't know, I go through a phase of utter panic, total confusion, a little bit of crying, I'm sure, is thrown in there into the mix. And then I think I just look at the resources that I have. And I would say that in 2004, I wasn't jumping online to like Google every problem. And so that was actually how I ended up with the mentor that I ended up with. He was a regular at the steakhouse. He was the GM for 3 radio stations here in town. He was a regular, and I think I called him out of the blue and just said, I've got, first of all, to get the job, I got the advice from him. But then the day that I had to write, I didn't know that I was getting hired for copywriting initially. I knew I was getting hired for sales. And when I sold my first account, they said, "Okay, go write your ad." And I was like, "Go write my ad? Like, are you kidding me?" So I called Paul up and, said, can you do lunch? And I remember in that period that I was at the radio station, I bought a lot of lunches. And that's a little tidbit. Like, you should be paying for lunch all the time, especially if you're taking someone out who is providing you with any value. If you're going to pick someone's brain, or, anything with them. I remember, I didn't have a lot of money. I couldn't expense some of this stuff out. And I still offered to take them to the nicest restaurants and to buy their lunch. And that goes back to the whole lifelong relationship thing, is that I'm sure that those lunches that I bought at 24 years old for Paul at these fancy restaurants, have helped, keep him in my circle. Just that characteristic of me doing that was, potentially impressive in his eyes. Took him out to lunch and I said, how do I write a radio ad? And he just taught me some simple lessons like, here's the message is the thing that's important in any advertising. If you have a full theater and a movie showing and you advertise, a free house, if you email this email address, you're going to get everybody in that audience responding because it's an attractive offer. And so he said, when you have to find your version of that with products and services. What is the hook? What is the thing that can, make their lives easier? He taught me things like, speak about the benefits of any product or service, not the features. So the benefits are, this Mac that I'm on right now, it's got a lot of memory. It can travel around with me. It can make my work faster and easier. I'm not talking about like the keyboard and the hardware and I mentioned memory there, which actually we could probably actually stay away from, but just the idea that it can speed up everything that I'm doing with work. That's speaking to the benefits of this product as opposed to the features, which is the metal, the keyboard, the memory numbers, what it can do, what it can connect to. There's another example that I've heard, which is, selling people, what all airlines and vacation companies do is they sell the destination, the picture of the palm tree over the ocean with the white sand. That's the picture that you get. They don't have a picture of like you struggling with your luggage at baggage claim, or you sitting in between two crying babies, because all of that is features. So just talking about, what they will feel and what they will experience at the end of working with you or using product or whatever. And just along the way, he gave me little tidbits like that. And that's been foundational. That has applied to every type of, ad that I write, not just radio. And then you learn things on radio about how to emphasize words. And I felt really proud that I was writing radio ads in a way that were non-cheesy and not conformist and were very speaking to people directly. And that resonated a lot on the talk radio station because, here in Phoenix, everything was jingles and fakey and do you need surgery and do you need to remodel? Another thing that Paul taught me was never start an ad with a question. He said only very, very, very experienced copywriters should be using a question to lead in because the person can say no in their mind and you've lost that person totally. If they say no to that first question, and they may be in your demographic, but they may have just been in a bad mood, had a bad day, and they're saying, hey, entrepreneurs, do you want to learn more about Facebook ads? You're causing someone to say yes or no in their brains. And so you want to bring people into a story. Imagine if you could write Facebook advertising. You wouldn't have to hire a blah, 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 blah. You're bringing them into the ad and you're not, shunning them or, segmenting people out. And I know that some people will say, well, I'm trying to segment people who, if you haven't been writing copy for 20 years, you're not good enough at it. You're not going to be. You need experience to know how to write an ad with a question at the beginning. So, those little tips along the way, foundational and, life-changing.
Absolutely. Now, at one point you said that the reason that you went and bought that course on Facebook advertising was because you had hit such a pain point that it forced you to take action, right? How do pain points relate to copywriting and sales? In other words, how do you take somebody's pain point and how do you resonate with them via copywriting or sales?
So I think as it relates to advertising online, generally with advertising, it is good to mention what the problem may be and what the solution is. The problem with online advertising at the moment is that with Facebook and advertising, their policies are so strict. So saying, do you have back pain? Facebook will penalize you for that ad. They'll either flag your account or potentially disable it because they don't want their users to have a negative experience. They don't want their users thinking about their back pain when they're on Facebook. So we have to stay focused on the solution. Enjoy a more comfortable ride. Give your back a break. When you're commuting, that type of thing is focus on and play up what you can on the solution side. I don't remember if his ad specifically. I'm sure it did at the time because the policies have gotten stricter over the years. So saying something like, "Do you suck at Facebook ads?" You probably actually could have written at one point, but now again they're a lot stricter about leading with a negative statement. And so I warn anyone that is anywhere near creating any online ads to stay away from any negative references until you really understand the policies and know how to work that into your advertising. Stick with the positives, stick with the benefits. Imagine playing with your grandkids. Imagine playing basketball with your buddies again. You're painting a picture of what life is like if their back didn't hurt.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, I want to dive again into your history. So, we talked about how the radio station went under at a certain point. And then you kind of had this transformation where you met with your mentor and you jumped out the window and you were in that free fall. Well, can you talk about when you first really felt like you found your footing? When did you really start to say, okay, I'm an entrepreneur, I can do this, it's time to kick butt?
I certainly don't want to discourage anyone because I think that, so it took me a while. I started the business in 2012, towards the beginning of the year. And then I didn't end up responding to that Facebook ad from Nick Unsworth until the end of 2013. And I remember a lot of that time being relatively painful. And so if I were to recommend anything to anyone is if your business is not going well, do what you need to improve it as soon as possible. And it is possible. And you're not alone thinking that you're crazy, thinking you're just plateaued at $3,000 a month or $5,000 a month or $1,000 a month. There are things you can do about it. And the majority of it, unfortunately, is mindset. Knowing that it's absolutely possible to make 20, 30, it's absolutely possible to achieve your dreams in general, but it's absolutely possible to achieve $20, $30, $40,000. And it helps to be surrounded by people who are doing better than you are. So it took me a year and 3/4, how I had a little bit of savings. I didn't have a lot. I mean, I downgraded my lifestyle to the point of, almost starvation. I was able to pay my rent. I was able to, get food when I needed it. Oh, I know what I did on the side. I think starting in August, I did wait tables, and that helped cover the income from the business. But I remember that was not what I wanted to do for a long time, and not something I wanted to be doing in my late 30s. After having worked at a radio station where I had worked up to, 5 figures a month, it was I'm back here waiting tables, taking home $50 to $100 a night. However, that job allowed me to stay the course with the business. And I do recommend to people who are just starting out, when they say, what would you do if you were starting out? I was I did work a job on the side. I wasn't too prideful. I didn't have too much ego. I went and worked a job so that I could feed myself. And literally I was just breaking even on bills, and I was collecting debt during that time. So, by November, December 2013, when I attended the first event, scraped together the money to attend the first event with Nick, it was around January or February after doing that. So if I had attended that event the year before, I might have been, rocking and rolling within 2 to 3 months. Within 2 to 3 months of that event, I was going. But I had a rough time. I did a little bit of community counseling because I felt a little bit like I was in a hole and in a pit. I reached out to friends and family for help. I had another friend who, was helping me buy groceries on occasion once a month, just because she knew how tough it was at the time. Looking back now, I go, gosh, I just was really making life a lot harder than it needed to be because I didn't want to, surrender. And I believe there's an idea of surrendering to win. Sometimes you need to stop fighting and if something's really hard, take a step back and go, why is this so hard? You see people making, 6 figures or, so it's possible. What is it that I'm doing that's making this so tough, and try to eliminate that from your life as soon as possible.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, I think one of the kind of principles that you were kind of getting at was the Pareto principle, I believe, where 80% of your results come from 20% of your actions, and there are many variations of that.
Right.
But what advice could you give to business owners or entrepreneurs who aren't really focusing on the things that are yielding the greatest results? What advice can you give them to help laser focus on exactly what they need to be doing to take their business to the next level?
So that first event that I attended at Nick Unsworth at the Nick Unsworth event in San Diego, I look back now and there's only a handful of us out of several hundred people in that room that are just still kind of in business and still going, and even fewer that are successful and have consistently grown. I've been lucky enough that my business has consistently grown a minimum of 50% every year. Which is crazy numbers in sort of the real world and retail and everything. And this year, I actually expect it to be bigger. And I attribute that to, I didn't succumb to shiny object syndrome. I started out with Facebook ads and I am in Facebook ads. That's not to say that there's not a time to maybe let an industry go if it is going out of style or it's not trending. But the fact that I have just not allowed myself to get distracted or bored with a lot of other services I could be offering, but not know any of them really well or in depth, it has not only given me the edge in the Facebook ads world. I literally had the question today from someone who said, with all the Facebook ad people coming up, what makes you special or different? And I was like, 16 years of copywriting and 5 years of Facebook ads straight up. I haven't strayed. I haven't dilly-dallied around. When people call up and say, will you do LinkedIn and will you do Pinterest? No, I will not. I do Facebook advertising because it delivers the lowest cost for the highest ROI. I'm not gonna go run ads on a platform that's unproven just because we want to. So staying the course. I've kind of got this dual thing of like surrender when it's not working and find the areas where it's not working and surrender and make corrections to those and reach out for help and whatever you need to do, whether it's a business coach, a counselor, those things that I did along the way. And then, but also if you're developing a skill online, you're gonna stand head and shoulders above the competition if you stick with it. You'll understand nuances and problems that come up much more easily and much more thoroughly than someone who's just starting in the industry today. I'm not worried about anyone who's starting a Facebook ad agency today. They can never be me. I've already got 5 years on them. They can't be me. They can be them, and they may have a style that caters to the clients that they're going after, but they can't be me, and they won't be me. And that's cool.
Absolutely. I think that's really powerful that you have your style and you've worked for so long to develop that style that it doesn't matter what anybody else is doing. You got your own thing, and I think that's really important for entrepreneurs to really get it into their head. So again, let's add just a ridiculous amount of value to this call. So you're do it. You've been in Facebook advertising for 5 years now. What would you say are some of the biggest takeaways that you've gotten on how to be successful using Facebook ads?
So don't have a short-term vision. Running there are very few products and services that if you run an ad for those products and services to a cold market, who are going to react and invest in what you have to offer. And usually it's very evangelical verticals like sports teams. Sure, you can pay the NFL, get a logo, slap it on a t-shirt, run an ad to, whatever fans, 49ers fans with the 49ers logo. And those people will buy because there's a built-in brand recognition, trust, excitement, and that kind of thing. Most businesses do not have products like that, and they do not have brands that are that large. So the yoga studio down the street or the karate studio down the street can't just run a cold ad, even for one of their outfits with their logo, and expect anyone to spend any money on it. So what you have to do is there's nothing more valuable in social advertising than being good to your audience, offering them valuable content, nurturing them over time, and slowly building your list with qualified prospects, not just blanketing a certain demographic to try to get everybody that you can. The thing that's going to make the difference between 0 ROI and 10 times ROI is how much you care and how much you've shown you've cared over the last however many months. And the longer you've been doing it, the higher your ROI is when you have an offer to make. There's definitely a correlation there. So we do not take on clients who have a short-term vision, who are looking to make a fast turnaround, because I don't want to take on a client, provide 0 ROI after 1 month when I have the possibility of serving them up 10 to 20 times ROI after 6 months or a year. Because that's how Facebook works. We have to take the time to nurture the audience, provide them value, just like you're doing on your show today. The fact that you're taking the time to do these podcasts is like a huge investment. And, your audience should be just deeply grateful that you set aside this time, and you do it. And I can see it in your eyes because you care. And that is going to be the biggest return on investment than any of your competitors out there.
Absolutely. And I do want to just say that I am very grateful for anybody that does listen to the show. It really does mean a lot. Like Mario was saying, I really do appreciate everybody that is listening. But let's get a little bit technical, right? Because we've been pretty abstract, theoretical, and I love where this interview has gone so far. But let's get technical, okay? If you had to break down Facebook ads, there's kind of the back office stuff like the targeting, the budget, the scheduling, all that kind of stuff. And then there's the stuff that the people actually see, right? Which one do you focus more of your time on? And how do you really go about choosing all those things? Like how do you choose an audience? How do you figure out your targeting? How do you do that?
So I want to declare right here that if I see the word easy as it relates to Facebook ads anywhere online ever again, my head will explode. Facebook advertising is not easy. And if we can all take a moment and just digest that, so that anyone who's ever placed an ad and has gone crazy and not understood why it didn't work, or those who are even a little more advanced and still have that, kinky campaign that won't cooperate, anyone that's expected results within 1 day, you're justified in your feelings. It's a very, very complex skill. I have a team of 7 who help me implement the Facebook ads, a team of 7 who all do different parts, have, handle different mechanics, help with the ads. I oversee and I polish every ad that goes out myself. Still at this point, I may not do that forever as I grow, but for right now, I am the last eyes on a campaign before it goes out. But there's an extraordinary amount of research that goes into who we're going to target. There's extraordinary research that goes into what types of offers we should be giving them. We take the time to see if the graphics that we're using literally are emotive. Does this graphic stir up an emotion? And it can be anything. A guy catching a football, versus one that looks fakey stock photo. People can sense when it's real raw emotion, and when it's just fakey, and that makes all the difference in your ads. So just think, I have some sort of a football product. I'm just going to slap up a picture of someone with a football or a football by itself or whatever. No, it actually helps to have. So for all the art majors out there, it actually helps to have a level of art history background so that what images are stir more emotion and what images don't. And then finally, of course, the copy has to be very real. It doesn't need to be written. What I see more often is entrepreneurs trying to write copy that sounds like a TV ad or a radio ad that they heard at some point. And so they write it like they think it should be stated. And what they need to do is just write in their own language and describe whatever they're offering as if they would their best friend at the bar, and use that language. That's what's going to connect people to you. This is it's becoming more and more and more human to human, as opposed to, business to cut B2C or B2B, business to business. So a little bit of, technical things that the audience can kind of get their heads wrapped around is if you haven't run ads consistently and you haven't built audiences, I would encourage them to build the 4 core warm audiences where we know that in the long term, most of their sales are going to come from. Not tomorrow, maybe not even next month, but in 6 months to a year, 90 to 99% of their sales is going to come from these 4 core warm audiences. The first one is website traffic. That's becoming more and more valuable, and that is my most valuable audience right now. So building traffic to your website, send them to your blogs, share them on your page, get your friends to share and help drum up traffic to your blog. Run a simple clicks ad to a blog that's been popular. If you know that there's 1 out of the 10 blogs that you've written that you've gotten a lot more response on, then spend $5 a day, run an ad to that blog in the interest of just building that audience so that you can make an offer later. So website traffic is the first one. Video viewers, post videos, either polished or live videos. Either one works. Run an ad to that. You can get views for, as low as a penny. We're seeing views anywhere from 1 penny to 5 pennies. Target people that would likely be interested in it. You can pick ages and you can go in there and pick some interests. If you're a sales trainer, maybe pick sales. Run that ad. With videos, definitely try to have a little bit of a template where you present a problem, like you said, how to increase your sales numbers or how to close more sales over the phone. Provide the solution and then let them know how they can reach out to you or find out more or read more about you without being salesy. Your purpose is to be helpful first. So video viewers is the second audience you want to grow. Your email list. It's kind of like most entrepreneurs know that. It's worth reminding. Always grow your email list and always grow your Facebook fans because they can be monetized over time. So website visitors, video viewers, email list, and Facebook fans. And that's the order of profit, like how profitable each group is.
Absolutely.
In the long run.
Absolutely. So one thing that I do see a lot in Facebook advertising is that people take this big chunk of money and they just try to throw it at the ads and they hope something works. And then, a month or 2 later, they've lost a couple $100 or a couple $1,000 and they're like, all right, well, I literally did not make a single sale off that, right? So as far as budgeting goes, you mentioned $5 a day for the video views. What's a good place to start, right? And how do you build that budget over time?
So I believe that you can boost. It's just been a while that I have done this personally, but I believe that you can still boost videos on your page for as low as $1 a day. And what that allows you to do, just on that $1 a day, you can see what content is the most engaging, so that you can throw more fuel on the fire of the video that gets the most likes, engagements, shares, perhaps traffic to your website. The idea is always be testing. So, a good exercise would be over the next 2 weeks, post 10 videos on your page that, provide a problem, provided that it's not, you're not mentioning things like fat loss or weight loss or find love or these things that are prohibited, which you can find in the Facebook ads policy page. But again, let's say, marketing, how to rock at a networking event. Here are the 3 things you can do to take home the most business cards that you've ever taken home at your next business event. And then go over those 3 items, those bulleted items, finish it up with let them know who you are and where they can visit your website or what you want them to do. Like my post, feel free to leave a comment about what your networking secrets are. I would encourage anyone in the audience to create 10 Facebook Live videos. Those are the easiest. And boost those each for $1 for 1 day each, and then go back at the end of 2 weeks and review the results. And that will already start to train them on how to look for campaigns that are working.
Absolutely.
Because you and I'm extremely educated in this one area. I, to this day, cannot predict what is going to work and what's not. We're dealing with humans and their emotions.
Absolutely. I think that's really profound what you're saying, and I think you're absolutely correct. Just because something has worked in the past, we're people. We're not static creatures. We're dynamic individuals, and so our interests are going to change, how we react to things are going to change. So I really think that's important. Now, with all of these things to keep in mind with Facebook advertising, right? There's the targeting, there's the budgeting, there's the scheduling, there's the copy, there's the images, there's the pixels, there's the whole funnel, there's the email list, the website traffic, all these different things. Mm-hmm. It would be so much easier if you could say, hey, can somebody please help me out, right? So that's where you step in, right? So
I'm a big fan of that. I love going out and finding, agencies and freelancers to do my work.
Absolutely, absolutely. So for somebody who may be struggling with Facebook ads, or maybe finding something that is working, but they just need help scaling it, how can you and your team help them?
So the first thing is we'll spend a pretty extensive time figuring out and discussing what your strategy should be. It's a pretty in-depth conversation. We also send a pretty in-depth questionnaire over. And then we decide if what we're suggesting, is something that the client would be interested in. And what I end up suggesting is, guess what? For the first month to 3 months, we need to spend time just building those 4 core warm audiences. And that's what I do for them, is build those 4 core warm audiences, particularly if they haven't nurtured their audience recently. I have clients who have been great at nurturing their clients prior to my arrival, and we were able to get ROI in the first week. We're able to make some offers on products because they're totally nurtured, they're warmed up, and they're dying to get an offer for their products. So I've gotten as high as around 5 times ROI even in the first week for people who have been consistently nurturing their audiences. But reaching out to me via my website, which is marigoldmarketinggroup.com, with your permission,
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to actually put all the links that Mari talks about in the description below. So tell people how they can reach you, and I'll put them in the description.
Okay, yeah. So website, marigoldmarketinggroup.com, Facebook page, facebook.com/marigold marketing. We post a lot of blogs from around the internet. I don't have as much time to do the writing at this point because, again, I'm in scaling mode at the moment. But we post the types of articles that my team reads and follows, usually from DM or Mari Smith or Dennis Yu or John Loomer. These are all sort of people who have stamped their name on the Facebook ads industry. Twitter. I think I'm Mari Connor AZ. That happens to not be my number one platform, but you can catch me either via my website. You can actually sign up for a free Facebook ads audit. So if you've been running ads and you're having trouble, there is a link for a free 15-minute call on my website. And then, just catch up with me over on Facebook since that's where I'm usually hanging out.
Absolutely. So, to everybody listening, I don't know if you caught that last part, but Mari just offered you a free Facebook audit. So somebody that's been doing this for years is offering you a chance to, put her spectacles on and tell you exactly what is not working for you. And then, y'all might be able to talk about forming a potential partnership between your two entities. So I highly encourage you to check out all those different things. Again, the links are in the description below. So that being said, Mari, I have a few more questions for you. I really do appreciate the time that we've spent today. It's been a ton of fun, and we provided a ton of value. What 3 books, if you had to recommend some books, what 3 books would you say are your top 3?
Okay, so the first one is The Count of Monte Cristo, and here's why. I am a huge fan of leveraging fictional stories as personal development literature. This is a fantastic story of a person who is put into prison for something he did not do, but in that period that he was in there, he meets another prisoner who helps teach him all of the skills that he needs in the world to move in higher society. So he has a fellow prisoner who teaches him what books he should read, what skills he should develop, how to write properly, how to sit down properly at a table. And there's something very, very, that is one of my books that's a great reminder to me. I try to dive into it every 2 to 3 years. It's a great reminder that even when bad things happen, there's a whole lot you can do in the meantime. There's no reason to wallow. The second one would be The 4-Hour Work Week. That book fundamentally that book was the first step into sort of cracking open my vision of the world and my mindset. And I can think of it. I've read it probably 4 or 5 times now, but I can remember that first time that I read it and the book sounding like Greek. It sounded unbelievable. It sounded like this is crazy. And every time I've read it since, I'm able to pick up something new because I don't have those mental blocks while I'm reading it of like, there's no way, because most of it I have implemented in my business now. And even to this day, I can re-listen to it. I usually listen to it on audio when I go to California as a refresher. And I can listen to it and I'll pick up on, another little nuance about how you can grow a business quickly, how you can start a business online. And it's amazing to me that the first time I read it was in 2008 and we're 2017. And it was unbelievable then. It was completely foreign. Like, this guy is full of BS. And, 9 years later, I'm running a business exactly as he described it in that book. So that one's like a little bit eerie because like I read it and now I'm like living it. And that wasn't the plan. And then the third one would be the book on Facebook marketing, which was written by Valerie Shootman and Nick Unsworth. And for obvious reasons, Nick was my first coach, but Valerie Shootman, has been an indispensable just wealth of knowledge. I've learned tons of life lessons and business lessons from her. I just hold her in the highest regards. And if there's anyone that knows Facebook ads, even beyond my skill level, it would be Valerie Shootman.
Fantastic. And I'm actually reading the 4-Hour Workweek right now, and it is awesome. It is so good. I mean,
my favorite part is when he says, "Go and lay in a bar on the floor."
I haven't gotten to that part yet, but
yeah, he says, when we're talking about this, brings us back to the beginning of the conversation about doing things that are uncomfortable. He encourages the reader to go into a public place, lay on the floor, be comfortable with that, and if anyone comes over to ask why they're doing it, just to say, "I felt tired. I feel like laying down."
That's
and the
awesome.
idea is to get you ready for those moments when you're going to make mistakes and have failure and you're going to look stupid. You might as well just get used to it.
Absolutely.
It's going to happen.
Absolutely. So, I have one more question for you. Oh, actually, I have 2 more questions for you. The first one is, after all these different things that you've done, all the successes that you've had, and you worked your way up. Who do you see yourself as? Like if you had to describe yourself to somebody else, how would you describe yourself?
That's a fantastic question. Let's skip to the second question and see if the answer to the first comes to me while you're asking the second one.
Okay. So the final question that I have is there anything about yourself that you think is an important part of who you are that I did not ask you about today? In other words, what did I miss?
So I don't talk about this a lot because it just doesn't come up a lot, but I've been sober for 8 years. So I don't drink, and I go to conferences, and everybody's usually there to party, and that's just not a part of my life. So I've been sober for 8 years.
Wow. That takes a tremendous amount of strength.
The name came to me on the next question, on the question that we skipped, and I don't know why, but Jodie Foster of all, the actress and director. I think I just loved her in her early work. I respect how she's gone through her life, and I respect that she made the jump from actor to director, and that she's always just it appears that she's gone to the beat of her own drum. I couldn't even tell you that I've read an autobiography on her or anything. Just something about her style resonates with me. And I think being someone that, sort of is direct and has a very strong side, that I relate to that side of her.
Fantastic. So, Mario, I do want to thank you for all the time that you've spent on this interview. Again, it's been a ton of fun, and we provided a ton of value. All the links that we've talked about are going to be either in the description below or wherever you're, seeing this interview. It's going to be somewhere. I'll make sure that you can access it. Highly encourage you to reach out to either myself or Mari. Fantastic individual. A lot of fun, talking with you. And to everybody else that's listening, I do want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for listening. I really do care about you, and you know, every single one of these interviews is for you. If there's anything that I can ever do for you, just let me know. So I love you. Thank you. And this has been another Project Egg interview. Today we've been talking with Mari Connor from Kansas. Take care.
Thanks a bunch.